Hello. It's time to do another one of these. Thanks for coming back to my office. Um, it was mentioned to me in a text that of somebody who had watched the videos that it was very much like sitting in my office and talking to me, and that's really exactly what I'm going for. I want you guys to feel as though you're here with me um, as I talk about the things that are going on in my work and in my office and in my life. Um, So in the last video, uh, you saw some pictures, some flash pictures, kind of like a slideshow of words that have been framed and hung up on the wall. They're all over my office, and they're just words that have affected me in some way, um, that are really important, and that I think are very cool. Um, the word badass is up here, which is a word that I use every day to describe everybody in my life. Um, let's see, crazy is up here. Kittywampus is like kittywampus. I don't know if anybody knows what that word is, but it means like slightly off kilter. And if you go back and watch, you can see that the frame is level, but the words kind of go off kilter. um, One of the weird ones that you would think is the word was. Um, And the reason that's up there is because of all the typing words. That's my favorite word to type because it's just like the W, A, and the S are so close together that it's just, you just do like that. Flips through your hand. Really easy. Um, so that's, something. Um, and the word awkward is up there. Awkward is my favorite word. I don't use it very often, but it is my favorite word because awkward looks, when you're looking at it, it looks awkward. But when you spell it, it sounds really graceful to be spelled. Um, AWKWARD just flows real elegant. And so anyway, it's, as a writer, me and other writers think about stuff like this. We get caught up on words and like how they work and stuff like this, and we get into we get excited by that kind of stuff. So let me tell you who's in my office. I've got Sadie. She was fed about 45 minutes ago. She's still licking her bowl. Confident that she's lost something, even though all she's tasting is steel. I've got Jordi. You probably caught last time when you saw Jordi that he's a pretty big dog. He was right over the side of the desk, but he's confident that he fits everywhere. So right now, my wife is in a very small recliner, and he has shoved his way. Oh, there's her lightning. He has shoved his way up there and is comfortable on a chair that he really doesn't fit on. My wife's a saint. She lets him sit on it anyway, no matter how uncomfortable it makes her. But what we say is, Jordi fits everywhere. There's always room for Jordi. Is the um, is the saying. Okay, so I want to show you a couple more things from my desk. Here is my desk. I'll show you my desk right now. Um, this is my Yeti. I know you guys have seen it over and over again. It says Yeti right there. If you don't know, Yeti is a company that makes thermal stuff, and it's supposed to be the greatest thermal um, things that you could possibly buy. Um, and their stuff is pretty expensive. A couple of my friends had thermal cups like this one, and they were kind of like other brands. And me and my wife went to Duck for vacation with her mom and dad and the boys. And I saw the Yeti at one of the shops, and I was telling her that I wanted to get one of the cups, and that it didn't have to be a Yeti because they were really expensive, but I wanted one like it. And she insisted on buying an actual Yeti instead of the other brand, which was very cool. I have it with me all day long. Most times it has iced coffee. I drink it all day long. But if anybody asks, I want you to tell them that it's always filled with ice water, and the only thing I ever drink is ice water, and that I'm super healthy. So that's on you. Always the ice water. Do that. Okay. The other thing I want to show you is it's this die right here. This is a 10-sided die that is used for the game Dungeons and Dragons. It's a 10. Usually, what you do is you roll 2 10-siders to work out percentage, and you call which 10-sider is high. That is the 10th place on the 10-sider. So you could see that every number had 0 after it. Second die you roll is the 1s place. However, I don't use those. I've got a lot of sets, and I always just use the singles place, and so those are my extras. However, I used to use them when I was in high school and middle school, and so I keep them around. I keep that one around, and what I do is I keep it because Dungeons and Dragons was huge for me, and it is the reason that I can do what I do now. I have a second monitor, which you guys probably pick up on, because when I read them, I'm always like, You guys probably picked up on the second monitor thing. And on the bottom of the second monitor, there is a small blue light that flashes. You can barely see it, but there's a small blue light that flashes. So I put the 10-sided die directly under that light. And so there's always light going through the die itself as a way of spotlighting where this whole fantasy thing came from and where it started. So I got that. And I wanted to show you my lock. This is my lock. It's an old lock. It doesn't really work. It's more of a novelty thing. I use it symbolically. As I write pages, I print them off, and I put them in a tray, like an out tray for a desk that I'll show to you sometime. And when I'm writing the book, I leave this open, meaning the book's not finished, the book can be changed, that kind of thing. As soon as I finish the book, I close it, meaning the book is finished, the book is done, and I can be done thinking about it, and I can be done planning it. And it usually means that I'm not going to revise it for years. So this is how I symbolize that when I'm working. Those are the 3 things that I want to show you. However, I've messed up in the filming of this, and I forgot to say I was going to show you my desk. So I'm going to do that now and cut it and put it in front of what I just said so that you guys don't notice that I messed up. Okay, that was my thing. So it's all taken care of. Mistake was never made. All right, so I'm wearing a piece of jewelry that's very important to me. It's this right here. And I want to tell you about it because it's very cool. This is a little steel bracelet that I got on a trip right around the time that I graduated high school. my mom and dad knew that I needed some kind of fancy clothes to wear under my robe for high school, and we didn't have a lot of money, so I didn't have the fancy clothes. So they took me on a shopping trip one day during school. My stepfather took off work, and my mom got me out of school. And we drove up to Springfield and went to the mall and started buying stuff. And I got this really cool shirt that I wore for years. I wish I still had it. It was really amazing. I bought it from a store called Structure, which I think they went out of business. I can't find them anymore, but they had great clothes. I got some pants. I don't remember much about them. I got a tie, and the tie was kind of maroon, and it had beer steins all over it, but they were really small, so you really couldn't tell what it was. I managed to slip that by my mom. So I had beer steins on. And then, as we were walking, we found this. And this was my graduation present. Like I said, we didn't have a lot of money. So she just got me this bracelet. We got it at a store. It was a kiosk. And they had a lot of different stuff. And you could get it engraved. So the front is engraved with the word storyteller in all caps. Because back then I told stories and I was a DM and I was running games, and that's what some of my friends, that was the nickname that some of my friends gave to me, especially one of my friends named Scott. Mitch and Scott in an earlier video, he's the one that got me the foil dragon that I showed a couple videos back. So in the front it says storyteller. On the back it says Charlie Poet. Now, I wrote for the school newspaper. There's some stories that are about that in my autobiography and the twisting path that I took to get on the school newspaper. I was only really interested in writing fiction, but when Miss Learman calls, you do not ignore the call, basically. She was a very, very gifted teacher, really knew what she was doing, and she ran the paper. She wanted me. And another teacher that was very important to me, we talked about her in an earlier video. Another teacher, kind of, Miss Haig, she just kind of shoved me in that direction. The one that I wrote the pumpkin story for. So I end up on the paper, and we're talking about what we're going to put in, and I wanted to write fiction. So I talked to her, and she was like, we don't usually do fiction. And I was like, yeah. I had been in an earlier class, and part of that had been the history of the newspaper. And I said, I understand you don't normally do fiction, but you could. We could do a serial fiction thing where I start a story, and then every time I add to that story until the last issue of the story for the year where I finish the story. And she's like, and I said, well, you taught me that Charles Dickens and Edgar Allan Poe did this. And she was like, well, you were listening in class. For my grades, I really didn't realize you had. Anyway, so I wanted to write under a pen name. So we took the pen name from Charles Dickens and Edgar Allan Poe, and what I called myself was Charlie Poet. And the gimmick of the serial was I write a beginning, and there was an announcement in it that said, if you want to make suggestions on what should happen in the story, go to Miss Learman's room, and hanging from the chalkboard is a bag. It was a very cool bag. I don't remember who put it. It might have been Miss Learman's, but I think it was brought in by one of the other staff members. Anyway, it was very cool. It was it had patches on it, like it was like a patchwork quilt, and anyway, it was very cool. And it hung from the chalkboard, and there was a sign on it that said Charlie Poet's Bag of Tricks. And so you were supposed to come in and leave a suggestion for what should happen in the story, and I would write. If it was good and I was inspired by it, I would write that suggestion. There was one teacher, one English teacher, who really loved the idea, and so after the first issue came out, he made an assignment for all of his students in all 7 hours, or 6 hours of his, no, 7 hours, all 7 hours of his English class. He made an assignment where everybody had to write an end to the story. So then he brings all the graded papers to Miss Lehrman, and she thought it was hilarious. And she walks over to me one day when I got to newspaper class, and she just dropped it down in front of me. Did you hear the ring of the chime? She dropped it down in front of me, and she's like, "These are the suggestions." And I was like, "Ugh, there were more than 100 there." She goes, "These are the suggestions." And I was like, "Okay." She goes, "And you're going to read every one of them." So I read some that day in the class. I took some home, and I read some there. And the next day I read some in class. It was ridiculous. Some people had written like 3 or 4 paragraphs. Some people had written 5 pages. So the assignment really, and it was very cool. It was very, very cool. It meant a lot of work for me, but it was very, very cool. So, so there was that. So this is my shirt today. It's supposed to say villains on it. That's long gone. It's supposed to have a bowling pin on it. You can see it right here. The bowling pin has a mask. And this is my villain shirt. I was in a bowling league a long time ago, with my cousin Tigris and Becca and a couple of people. We had shirts made. This was my shirt. This shirt is 13, 14 years old. On the back, it used to say Gutter Boy, because that was my villain name. It is torn and tattered. Check this out. I have parts that are hanging off of it. And there's holes riddling the entire thing. I'll probably never get rid of it. When I do get rid of it, and it's simply falling off my body and I can't wear it anymore, I'm going to make a quilt out of it. It's the most comfortable shirt that's ever been designed by man. And I happen to have it, so I know you're jealous. It is, it's so old and so ratted and so torn up. But I wanted to show it to you guys. So here it is. So, okay, I wanted to tell you what we're going to do today. I'm still trapped in the whole Bramble situation. I'm going to talk about that and give you an update on that later today. Later in this video. But I'm still trapped in the whole Bramble situation. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a story from my autobiography. And it's got a mention of Bramble. And then after I read it, I'm going to talk about like the effect it had on me and all that kind of stuff, and talk about Bramble a little bit. And then I'll do an explanation video, like I always do. Anyway, that's what we're gonna do today. So I'm gonna get to it and try to find it on my. You would think I'm making this sound as though my hard drive is a disaster. I'm actually very well organized. Just for some reason, when I do these videos, I get really nervous and I like look all over the place. My hard drive is actually very, very organized. So I don't think because I'm like, oh, I had trouble finding that I'm just disorganized. That's not the case at all. But just when I'm in here in front of this camera, we talked about this a number of times. When I'm in front of the camera, I'm very nervous. So that's why it seems like I'm super unorganized. But if that was the truth, my wife would not allow that. If I was super unorganized, she'd be like, okay, we got to fix this. So anyway, okay. So I'm gonna look for it, read it to you. We're gonna talk about it, and then I'll give you a Bramble update. So anyway, here we go. Okay, so you can probably tell from the lighting. On my second monitor, I have a white document up. I did find it. It wasn't that hard. I pulled up the document and typed in what I thought was the title of the story, and it didn't come up, and I threw myself in a tizzy, and all that kind of stuff. And my wife just went, stop, breathe, all that kind of stuff. She does that a lot. Okay, we're gonna read it and go from there. It's called The Fat Boy. This is from the first volume of my autobiography called Teardrop Road, and this is book 4 in Teardrop Road called Shadow of a Street Rat, and it talks a lot about my the neighborhoods that I grew up in. So here's the Fat Boy. How was I supposed to know what it was when I was standing in front of the most gorgeous piece of machinery I had ever seen? On the road, they looked different. There was always a scary guy riding it, always a guy who needed a bath, wearing a torn-up t-shirt and scuffed boots. Under those conditions, it's impossible to see what we were seeing at the age of 8 when we stood in front of our first real motorcycle. When I tell you I have the image of that bike locked in my mind to this day, will you believe me? When I tell you I just went looking for a 1984 Harley Davidson motorcycles for an hour so I can tell you exactly what it was that took our breath away, will you think me silly? Well, I did. I searched my mind and I searched the internet, and I can tell you when I was 8, I saw a 1984 Fat Boy, flaming red with a black leather seat and black saddlebags. It was huge. I'd never stood in front of one before. On the street, they looked small, but this thing was enormous. The tires were thicker than I thought they would be. The handlebars bigger. The entire bike was massive. And Cage and I stood there staring slack-jawed at it for almost an hour. Cage is one of the kids that's featured in this book. He is my best friend and next-door neighbor. All I knew about motorcycles was that Bramble rode one. He was my mother's old boyfriend and my uncle's dearest friend. I knew he was wild, a rough-and-tumble martial artist with a craving for the nightlife and a habit of finding himself in a fight. To this day, I believe Bramble was my mother's soulmate. But he was too wild, and she had 2 young kids. We're going to talk about that later. The motorcycle reminded me of him and the way he used to hold me tight to his side and watch Saturday morning cartoons with me when he just got home from a hard night of drinking and fighting. I love Bramble with all my heart. Even today, I know if my mom had been able to work it out with him, my life would have been so much different than it was. I would be a different man. Well, this was not Bramble's bike, but it was gorgeous. And as I stood staring at it, I saw the owner walking up the street. He was coming out of Placid's house. She was a new mother with a bland husband, and she entertained gentlemen callers while her husband was away. The toughest man I ever saw came out of her house and stopped before us. "Hey guys, how you doing?" he said. He was tall, with a handsome face and a black eye. His hair was long and black, and it shined a way I'd never seen before. He had a bit of a beard, but only that which disinterest could provide. This was not a man who was trying to grow a beard. This was a guy too busy to shave. "We are okay," I said through numb mouth. "We didn't touch your bike," Cage said. "We weren't going to do anything to it. We were just looking is all." "Want to touch it?" he asked. We could not speak. Rule 1 is you never touch a man's bike. You never sit on it. You never lay a finger on his bike. Money and women come and go. Steal a woman or a few bucks from a man, and years later you can still work it out. It'll take a fist and a few kicks. But you can always work it out. Touch a man's bike, that can get you killed. He stared down on us, and I couldn't breathe. You fellas sure you didn't touch my bike? I took a step back. Cage's chin started to quiver. Honest, we didn't. We just looked at it, Cage said. Then he turned and ran. I'm just fucking with you, little man. I'm not gonna kill you, the man said to me with a laugh. You didn't run. You're either made of harder stuff or you're locked in place. I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt. Now go get your friend and bring him back here. I ran. I found Cage in his basement behind his mother's old washing machine. Together we braved the streets again and came to the guy's bike once more. I was just fucking with you, little dude. I'm not gonna kill you. But the lesson is the same nonetheless. Never touch a man's bike without his permission. He laughed. We get kinda edgy when people get too close, but you guys are fine. Do you have a helmet? Cage asked. Do I look like the kind of man that wears a helmet? He ran his fingers through his hair and grinned. No helmet, no chaps. Just me on the road. You ever been in a crash before? Yes. How did it go? I asked. He seemed to take on a sad look when he said, lost my first girl in that accident. She was a super glide, gorgeous, with a bit of a holler in her, and a fuck you that would not quit. I love that bike. There's almost nothing left of it when that truck was done with her. He lifted his shirt. I got this for my part. He pointed at a spot on his flank. That looked like a burn. Road rash. I was in the hospital for a while. Got out. The first thing I did was buy her. He jerked his thumb in the direction of the bike. Want to ride? My heart stopped. I looked around to see if anyone had heard. I felt like I was in trouble already, but when I looked at that bike, I knew I would get on it. I was not to talk to strangers. I was never to get in anybody's car if I didn't know them. But I knew, looking at that bike and that man, I was going to ride that bike. Cage was first. The man sat him down with no effort at all, hiked Cage right off his feet, and placed him on a seat in front of him. Grab a hold of something, the man said. Cage hugged tight to the gas tank, and with a spit and a growl, they were gone. When the rumble of the bike was gone and nothing but the sound of the street was left, I started to cry. I just knew the biker had kidnapped Cage. I tried to imagine what I was going to tell the police, what I was going to tell Cage's mother. I sat on the grass between the sidewalk and the street, held my face, and wept. In my life, to that point, the sweetest sound I'd ever heard was the distant roar of that bike as it came down the street in front of our house. I saw a look on Cage's face that day that I'll never forget. Within that man beats the heart of a biker. He was born to be on a motorcycle. I hope that one day, when his life is his again, he finds a way to get a bike under him. I truly hope he's not lost that part of him I saw that day. When the biker I did not know lifted me on the fat boy, I was at once struck with how wide it was. My legs barely fit around the gas tank. I gripped the tank hard, and the man said, "Fuck it," and off he went. As I think back on it now, I remember him saying something to himself when he took Cage out on his ride. I realized every time this guy got on his bike and started it up, he would say that to himself. We leaned on the turns. It stole my heart to do it. When I tipped on the bike for the first time, I almost cried. His arm wrapped around me, and his hand sat on my chest. He shouted something to me, and though I could not hear it, I understood. This man would not let anything happen to me. He had my back. When we got to the straightaway, he kept holding me, and I looked up at the street in front of me and held my hands out to my sides. The wind whipped across my arms and blew my shirt up. I leaned against this hard stranger who would kill a man if he touched his bike, and closed my eyes. I felt the wind, and I felt for the first time in my life like a badass. We got back to the sidewalk in front of the house. I got off the bike and looked at the window of my living room. Nothing. My mom had not looked out the window the entire time I was gone. Cage still stood locked in place, his eyes wide and a smile on his face. When he set me down on the ground, he nodded to us before he said, "Fuck it," and again was gone. It was as if he had never been there, but neither of us would ever forget it. For years we talked about it. I bought a motorcycle a few years ago. It was a gloss black 2010 Wide Glide. It was the coolest thing I'd ever sat on. I felt like a badass. I rode it a few times, but in the end, I just couldn't look in the wind and say, "Fuck it." I sold that bike to my father-in-law. It hurts every time I have to look at it. So, that was Fat Boy. one of the most important moments in my life. And it brings up Cage and where he is and what's happening to him. And we're going to talk about that too. Anyway, I'll be right back. You guys sit tight. Wait for your long wait. And I'll be right there. Okay. That was my reading of Fat Boy. It was a pretty big moment in my life. Never should have got on that bike. I read it to my kids and yelled at them as if they were the one that got on the bike. Trying to push into their mind that they should never do that. But we've spent a lot of time talking to them about personal safety and strangers and stuff like that. They learned about it in martial arts when they were real young. So it's not something I had to worry about, and I think Rafe, my oldest, actually gave me a lecture about how dangerous that was and that I should never do that again, as if he thought I was just waiting for a guy with a cool bike to get on so that I could jump on the bike with him. Anyway, that was Fat Boy. Mentions Cage. Cage was manipulated into helping a guy commit murder, and he ended up being charged with a sentence with 33 years of prison. Last time I heard was a couple years ago. I think it was 2, that he had to do 3 more years before he was getting out. So he might be getting out very, very soon. I don't know what's going to happen if he tries to get a hold of me. I want to say I'll go and see him. But it's gonna depend on where I'm at the time. He was a big part of my life. I write a lot of stuff about him. There is a couple of There was a couple of blogs that I put up about him. Blogs like Stealing Marbles and First Blood. I'm going to link all that. I want you to get to know Cage. I want you to see what it was like to be his friend and see what kind of person he was when he was growing up. Because Cage had a rough time. And, yeah. In the neighborhood we grew up in, there were gangs everywhere. And it was very easy to fall into crime. I ended up moving away before those opportunities came for me. But, yeah. So I was one of the lucky ones. Anyway, talks about motorcycles, it talks about Bramble. I'm going to tell you a story about Bramble. It's legend. Okay, so my mother had a divorce jar. We were living in a tiny basement apartment, and me and my sister happened to be gone that day. And Bramble and Rose were dating, so he got a new motorcycle. Dream bike. It's huge. It sounded like a raging animal. And he shows up at the house to pick up his girl. She climbs on the back and off they go. So I want you to imagine this day. It's not hot, but it's not cold. You have bought your dream bike that you've been thinking about since forever, and driving past and looking at pictures of and talking about it and all this kind of stuff. On the back of the bike you have your dream girl, your soulmate, the one you've been thinking about and talking about and looking at pictures of your whole life. And you finally got them both. And you're driving down the road, riding down the road. You ride a motorcycle, you don't drive one. And I think about that wind. And I think about her arms around his chest. And that moment of pure happiness for him. And it's followed quickly by a moment of pure happiness for my mother. Because they stop at a red light, and she probably moved wrong. Leaned over to one side. Something went wrong. And the bike started to tip. If you know anything about motorcycles, you know that those things are a lot heavier than you think they are. And this one was extremely, extremely heavy for an average motorcycle. So it starts to tip. Now he was a strong man, but he wasn't a big man. And when it starts to tip, he's fighting it as much as he can. My mom, she can't do anything about it. She's only making the situation worse. And there at the red lights, the bike slowly lays down. And he's cursing, and she starts laughing. Was she laughing because he got a bike too big? I don't know. Was she laughing because she was purely happy and something funny happened? I don't know. All I know is that that bike started to tip. She started giggling. By the time it hit the ground, she was gales of laughter, bending over, couldn't stand up. He's grabbing a hold of it. The rule when you're on a tipped over bike is that you turn around, you squat, you grab the top of the bike, and you stand it up with your legs. I'm sure he was doing that. That's common knowledge among bike riders. But he just couldn't lift this bike. They're laughing. Of course, the light turns green. Everybody's honking and screaming at him. It's Milwaukee, so nobody, it wasn't kind, small town stuff. Everybody in Milwaukee had somewhere to be. So nobody stopped and helped them pick it up. They just drove by screaming at him. And my mom was no help. So she's got a couple quarters. She runs to a payphone. I don't have to say that at the time she was 21 and they didn't have cell phones. She gets to the payphone. She's got to call two of his friends because it's such a big bike. It takes 3 people to lift it up. So she dials. She picks up the phone. She says what her name is. As she thinks about what she has to say, she bursts into gales of laughter. But on the other side of the phone, it could be screaming, crying. So this was all members of my uncle's crew. So, all they heard was that it was Rose. And they heard that she was screaming on the other end of the line or laughing. So they're all standing there this is my boy's sister. This is Rose. I have to help. And so they're freaking out. And she's wailing. Finally gets out what happened. Of course, they were such tight crew. They're immediately in the car. And she has to do it again. This story is legend in my family. Rose told this story over and over again. I think maybe only that she told it to me, though. Because I was the only one she really talked about Bramble to. She probably never mentioned it to my uncles She probably never mentioned it to her sister. I know my siblings never heard about it. It was just one of those things. I was the only one she ever talked to about Bramble, and if the topic ever came up, Mumble, my stepfather, would get upset and walk out. Because everybody knew. Everybody knew where she belonged. But the fact that she only talked to me about it, I think is suspect. So anyway, that's the Fat Boy. I'm gonna link it below because it is in my blog. It's on my blog, so I'm gonna link it below. So if you want to read it again, you can. And that's my explanation, and I think that's all I'm gonna say about it. And then I'll do a short little clip here, telling you where I'm at in the Bramble situation, and then that's our video. So, yeah. Okay, so I wanted to give you an update on where I am with the Bramble situation. First of all, Ancestry.com got a hold of me. They're the ones that have my sample and are checking my DNA. They got a hold of me and said that their labs are backed up and they had gotten the sample, but weren't able to do it yet, and da-da-da-da. About 4 days later, they got a hold of me again and said they had gotten the sample and they caught up in their labs and they were doing it now, and it'd be another 3 or 4 weeks. So I'm still trapped in this. So, of course, you guys are going to have to listen to this a little bit more and a little bit longer. That's the best I can give you. The main problem, though, is the denial and what's it called? The not denial, the unbelievability of it. The last however many videos, it's been a lot, I've been telling you every bit of proof that we have. And when I really look at it, and I ask myself if it's possible, I can't remember any of that. The idea is so foreign and so impossible to me that I can't remember any of that. And that is because of the myth that my mother has built of her purity. I call it a myth because it might be true. Maybe all of this is disrespect to my mom because she would never do this. So it might be true, and it might be, just degrading to her. But she built up this image of herself that was undeniably pure. She left Char because he cheated on her. And she said that cheating, she told me all my life that cheating was unforgivable and it was divorce worthy and all this kind of stuff. She made a huge deal about how cheating was not acceptable, and it was the only excuse that she had for divorcing Char. Maybe that was guilt talking, maybe not. The other thing is, she was always, all that I can remember is the last 10 years that she was in my life, where everything was about how pure she was and how she would never do anything wrong and Christ was on her side and all this kind of stuff. This whole purity thing that she fought. She also said that her family treated her wrong and talked terribly about her when she didn't deserve it. And that everybody badmouthed her, but she didn't deserve it. Which all of these excuses I'm giving you could be smokescreen to hide the fact that she did have an affair. So there's just a lot of information that she gave me that I'm having to fight. Where my doubt is hitting me that my mother would ever do this. That she would ever cheat on Char. And that she would ever involve herself in anything like this. If she heard that I was asking these questions, her defense would be, "Oh, how can you think that of me?" You know, that kind of thing. And maybe, how can I think that of her? But I do know that everything she taught me about being a man, about honor, and how to treat a woman, and all of that was all bullshit. She really didn't believe in any of it, because when I tried to live that way, she judged me. The only thing I have that can fight these doubts is, all of my life, my Uncle Rath said, your mom is not as pure as she wants everybody to believe she is. She's not as innocent as she paints herself to be. That was said to me over and over again. And it kind of like brings that that doubt into clear focus. The other thing is that when I mentioned it to Lioness and Tigress's mother, my dear aunt, that's still in my life, when I mentioned it to her, her first response was that she thought there was an affair, but she didn't know when. And her second response was, you should probably get yourself tested. When I talked to Uncle Rath about it, I sent him one message about it, and his answer was, you should probably get yourself tested. And he had never heard of an affair. Which, if this turns out to be true, I have one or two people to talk to prove that that right there is a lie. But he did tell me to get myself tested. So then I have all the other proof that I've laid out. The bipolar, the uncle, the actions, the looks, all that kind of stuff, the appearance, all of that kind of stuff, is hard evidence that I can use to beat back all of these doubts. But as it stands, every time I think about whether it's possible or not, the number one thing that hits me right away is my mother's myth of purity and how she would never do something like this. And just the idea of it is insulting and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with the fact that I'm probably looking at another 3 or 4 weeks of this. I'm dealing with the fact that I can't convince myself that it's even possible most of the time. Because most of the time I feel the great doubt. And that's what I'm fighting now. So I'm not going to know for a while yet. You're going to have to hear me talk about this for a while. I want to do a little bit of maintenance here. This is the first season. The first season is 13 episodes long. We are in the 9th episode. Ninth episode. My wife has confirmed it. We're in the 9th episode. It's 13 episodes long. I am planning a big finale. That anybody who knows anything about the fantasy world is going to be really excited about. So I'm planning a big finale. I'm going to end up taking 2 weeks off between episodes, and then I'm going to start another episode that's going to focus on something else. So that's what's coming. That's where I'm at. That's how long I have to wait. All of that. So, yeah. Anyway, that's our episode for the day. Do all the things. And I will see you next week. Thank you so much for coming to my office to visit. Bye.